All right. Yeah, I'm Tangle. I've been dealing with crypto since the 2013. Was in remote part of Canada, so I wasn't able to really buy it. So I started mining it. Started building crypto miners and learned about it the hard way. Yeah, so I was into Dogecoin, Litecoin at that time because Bitcoin was no longer mineable, and used that to convert into Bitcoin, and still holding Dogecoin, and still having Litecoin as a dear thing for me as well. But fell out of it for a little bit and got back in kind of in 2016, just as things ramped up into 2017, and then rallied through my second bear market at that time, and have had, yeah, so now leading into this next one has been amazing, and still holding what I can after experiencing all kinds of market turmoil and experiences with everything from exchanges, rug pulling, and being.
Hey,
hello.
hi, Manon.
That's yeah. Maybe I'll start again.
No, I think you're good. I can edit that.
Yeah, and then
so let's keep rolling for sure.
Yeah, having exchanges exit scam on us and losing value in that way, being robbed by the Fed with BTCE, and or by the Feds, I should say, FBI, and so just have learned a lot of hard lessons throughout my crypto experience, and especially with trading and margin leveraging and everything as well, is kind of a sketchy way to do things. So
Sweet,
anyways.
man. And you're still standing, so that's a good sign.
Still standing, wholeheartedly believe in crypto and the future ahead. So here we go.
You've already answered a number of my questions, so that's a really good intro. Or you haven't answered them, but you've indicated certain things. So we'll get back to that. You're up next, Kai.
Yeah, I bought a Bitcoin back in the day when it was $1,000 because I got into the FOMO of it all, and I bought it through an ATM, and there was a lineup and people were going crazy and they're talking about selling their homes so they could buy Bitcoin, and just total wackadoodle FOMO frenzy mania. And so with that Bitcoin, I kind of replicated some of just its experiences. I put it in decentralized exchanges. Half of it was stolen. I made hundreds of thousands of dollars. I lost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I ended up pretty much almost back where I started. But with experience and like a holy shit attitude, that was for real. That this technology does exist and there's something to be made from it. And I have been much more judicious and cautious with this second go around, and I am now officially a hodler. I don't leverage or margin trade. I just buy what I think is good tech and I hold, and I do not ever sell Bitcoin until it hits $1 million. And I am internally grateful for that degree I thought was a waste of time. My father convinced me to get a Bachelor of Science in Economics. I always thought it was basically shit paper. And now it's kind of paying off in spades. I really appreciate the analysis abilities it gives me. And and so my game is not only crypto, but also stock exposure to cryptocurrency. So Bitcoin mining companies, holding companies, just the whole, like, how can I make money from this burgeoning equity class without any self-limitations?
Holy crap. Okay. So this is for real, guys. We're dealing with some real shit here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you kind of both already touched on this, but how did each of you get into cryptocurrency? What was the first time you ever heard of it? And what was your reaction to the concept of it?
First time for me getting into crypto, I was big into Reddit at that time. This was 2013. Reddit was like just this really fun place to learn and experience things, and all these different corners of the internet. And I'd stumbled across this Bitcoin thing, and seeing like, oh, it was running up it just went from $300 to $400, and then kept reading about it was at $600. Like, what the heck is this thing? And my girlfriend at the time was also mentioning it, and she had bought like a half a Bitcoin for $30 or something back in the day. And so I started just researching this and was like, what's going on with this thing? And of course, with my personality type, I ended up down the rabbit hole and trying to figure out how to get any. And because being in the middle of Canada, it wasn't a fully available thing, and the premium prices on it that people were interested in selling it for was astronomical. And I said, to heck with this. So figured out, hey, I'm just going to go do it in the purest way and mine the cryptocurrency with computers and get it right from the source. I do not advise that.
Well, it's
I
not possible now,
investing. Right? I advise in investing in those companies that do it on scale.
Right. Well, we'll get to that question later, I guess. But because my understanding is it's a finite resource, and once all the Bitcoins have been produced, you can't make any more.
Correct.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, we'll get into that. Kai, what was the first exposure for you to cryptocurrency, and kind of what was your reaction from that point on?
Yeah, not to. I don't remember where I actually first heard of it, other than some weird news show or like part of the hype cycle. It was in the media, and I had no idea what it was. And then the more I learned, the more I kind of just it caught my attention somehow. The mathematics of it. I looked at the fact that there was a mining process and that it was, backed by hash rate, or basically computer power, computational power, and because I have a Bachelor of Science in Economics, my belief in like fiat money, Canadian dollars, US dollars, I recognize these things tend to fail over time. And so it caught my imagination for some reason. And ever since I bought my first one, I was kind of in. Sometimes kind of just on the back burner, because there was a massive market crash in 2017. Like, it murked a lot of people. Anybody who got into it over $1,000 walked away in disgust because they thought they'd just been scammed. So there was a massive recovery from that took a while. And then in that recovery, the technology just kept building and building. And we've arrived at a whole new equity class. And like in the last 6 months, the amount of money I have made is something I didn't think was possible, humanly possible for me. And so I'm eternally grateful to the industry and to all of the technicians and all of the blockchain technologists who are making this reality come true.
Awesome. So here's my first real question. If you can help me understand this, you will be geniuses. What is blockchain technology? No.
I think
this guy might be smart, sure. But to be truly smart, you have to explain it to a dum-dum like me in a way that I can understand. Because you might have all the words and all the facts in your head, but if you can't make me understand it, then it's not worth a whole lot. So what is blockchain technology, my friends?
The simplest way to put blockchain technology for you to understand this. Take this block of information, where this is where all the transactions are happening on Bitcoin, for example. All right. So we're going to use Bitcoin as the example, because blockchain, all it really means is a block of information that gets chained together in a stretch of blocks. Mm-hmm. So blockchain, the actual words, is exactly what it means. Right. Each block contains information, which is the network hashing all of your transactions. So the transactions are then a block gets produced. The transactions happen on the network, and they get put into a block of information. So a Bitcoin block, for example, is 10 minutes. That block of all the transactions that are happening in that 10 minutes go into that block and then are validated by the network. And then a new block gets created, and it is attached to the one previous to it. And then also the one that succeeds it as well. This way, there's always a line of information that the previous block is verified by its successor, if that makes sense. So it's just blocks of information chained together in a sequential order so that you can't reorganize it, essentially.
So the network is made up.
It's immutable. It can't be changed. And so he's described it mechanically, the block formation. I think of it also as a public ledger. I write on a public ledger, I owe Jesse $100, and it goes into the blockchain that is immutable. It can't be changed. So that me owing Jesse $100, and then Jesse's like, well, yeah, bitch, pay me. So I pay him $100, and then that $100 is now Jesse's, and he controls that $100, and it's immutable. It's forever put into the history of the blockchain. And they've created a currency that navigates that new blockchain technology where we can delegate funds to and from each other and purchase it from other sources. And nobody gets in between. No government, no bank, nobody. And that's a very radical concept. No middleman at all. Those fucking hedge fun, motherless suckers of genitalia need to be put out of business. And I think this is a realistic way for just individuals to compete and have the sovereignty and the access to the same mechanics of wealth creation as the oligarchical pricks at the top of the banking old infrastructure. Yeah, excuse me, I'm getting passionate. I just hit my computer.
Don't sugarcoat it, Kai. Tell us how you really feel about them.
I'll try better next time.
I'm just joking. No, that's a really good answer. And so what I was going to say is the network made up of other blocks? Basically, the entire network is a bunch of blocks of information, correct?
Essentially, it's all being run by, at this point, miners and nodes. So you've got nodes of people who are sorry, I shouldn't say people, but like our computers or processors that are validating that everything that's happened in the blockchain, on the network, is valid, and we agree to it because it adheres to the rules that we are playing by, essentially. So the protocol that's put in place, we all agree to it. And if there's something different, we would signal, hey, wait a second, we don't agree with that. We think that based on the protocol that we have, we're recognizing that there's some sort of there's a fungibility going on here, perhaps. And this is what Bitcoin was designed to do, is to eliminate the double spend. So with electronic cash, let's just say, hey, you know what, how do I know that you haven't already spent your coins somewhere else? And then allowing, and saying, hey, I can copy it and, split it two different directions, right, or more. So this way here, this is where it gets put into the blockchain and allows for immutability, as we've discussed. And this is where we're trusting the algorithm rather than having a third-party trust. And that's what we currently go with now, is with our traditional banking systems that we are accepting that your banking institution is not letting you double spend your dollars. And we're giving them the trust for that. But instead, we've removed that. And now we are giving the trust to the protocol, to the network. And that is all validated through the nodes. And then the miners are the ones who are actually providing the energy and hash power, the computational power, and the electricity for it, in order to computational time and power for the network. And then that's how they are being compensated as well when there's a block reward, because each block that comes out, that's where you get a reward that goes to whichever miner was able to find and populate and create the transactions in that block. So that's where you get the incentive system as well. So that's why people are incentivized to be a part and to help secure and participate in the network.
Mm-hmm. A guy I like who runs a hedge fund, he states it this way: what Jesse's describing is all back of the TV stuff. It's technical. What people like yourself need is, they don't want to know what the back of the TV looks like. They want to have the TV to look at and just be able to navigate. So how do you, Oliver, get exposure to a new asset class if you're interested in investing in it without needing a lot of technicality behind you? And so to me, that's the interesting interface, is how do we actually, and part of why I wanted to do this podcast show is more of a man on the street. Like, how does the individual empower themselves to join this new equity class without, allowing hedge fund people to skim 20%, or the, money creation system known as fiat currency allows bankers to profit over, free money. How do we, as citizens of the world, create literally global currencies and global equity classes that are universally accessible to every single human on the planet? And to me, like, when my mind wraps around that fully, like, we are looking at universal UBI, we are looking at like the potentiality in humanity, and this new technology it makes me very, very hopeful moving forward that something better is attainable.
Yeah, well, and it certainly sounds that way. I mean, I've been thinking about this leading up to today. Obviously, I've been giving it some thought, and it's like, it seems like what you're doing essentially with cryptocurrency. And this was my big hurdle at first, was like, how does it have value, right? Mm-hmm. And I know that fiat currency is, once was based on gold or whatever, but now it's based on nothing. Mm-hmm. You can literally print it. So I know that value is just this idea. Yeah, mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's an agreement, just like you were talking about. This algorithm or whatever is an agreement. All these nodes mm-hmm. agree to abide by these rules, and you check each other. But so my big hurdle was like, well, where's the value? With governments and with financial institutions, it seems to somehow at least maintain some semblance of value. But when it's a bunch of people making stuff with their computers, where's the value? But the idea is, you guys describe it, is that you're basically taking energy right? You're translating energy, electricity, computational power, and creating something that has value, just like they're doing with their printers in the, central banks and all that stuff. So, it has a value in the same way. And if anything, it's more valid because you really can measure the electricity that goes into this computer that makes the Bitcoin. Whereas these fuckers can just print billions and trillions and there's no accountability.
And
give it to the 2%, and then the 2% steals 80%, and it just becomes a completely illegitimate shit show.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, and just touching back on your on the electricity part of it, like the hardware that is required and the cost of hardware and the cost of electricity, that can give you a base price of what the cost of production is, essentially. So just like we look at any kind of our commodities, what it takes in order to get something out of the ground, whether it's something like oil, where it's like, oh, well, these countries, it costs them this much to get oil out of the ground, or other countries, it's different prices. That way we have like a price floor, essentially. So no different here, where it's like, you know what, it costs, I don't know what the current price is now for averaging. I want to say it's maybe $7,000 US to actually produce with the energy and hardware that is required in order to produce a Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. So right there, you've got a metric to work on there. So from that, you can say, yes, it's actually overvalued, it's undervalued, it's whatever we want to believe. So just in production cost. Now, we don't pay for products at the same price that we do for what it costs to produce them. So, we're very familiar with this in this consumeristic lifestyle that, things that give us value and add value to our lives or to our wealth are going to be worth more. So,
I like that you're getting rid of the middleman too, right? Sorry, go ahead, Kai.
Yeah, and the way you articulated, Oliver, was excellent. You kind of bridged. Jesse and I come from slightly different schools of thought, in case that wasn't obvious.
We got the guy who's got the Molotov cocktail and who's ready for the revolution, and then we got this guy who's just really into the maximizing the algorithm,
Yeah, a bit of both, right? So,
yeah.
Less Molotov cocktail and more evolution. Like,
sure.
It's a really beautiful evolutionary step that's just happening peacefully, and no one even is really noticing. And when they finally do, it'll be too late, and that's the best part. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, so for someone like me who's interested and who doesn't want to be too late, what's the advice that you give again to a dum-dum like me who I mean, I understand the basics of it now. I think probably it's like quantum mechanics. If you think you understand, you don't understand, but I think I understand. So what would you tell me if I had a couple grand or whatever to invest in cryptocurrency? What would be your advice to me? Knowing that I'm risk adverse.
Buy and hold. That is the best solution. If you are a noob getting into this, buy and hold. And hold your own private keys, understand the sovereignty of hanging on to your own store of value, and think of it that way. This, for me, I believe in Bitcoin purely because it is the largest store of value within the crypto space. It's also most decentralized and a variety of other things that are going on with it. It's the oldest one. And I mean, it's number one at the moment. Mm-hmm. So hopefully that continues. But being able to have the sovereignty of that as well, and realizing like, hey, I can actually take custody of this asset, where realistically think of it like gold. Digital gold is what you're currently having. You have all these gold bugs that are saying, hey, I want to hang on to, I want my, chunk of gold. They want to be able to hold it in their hand and they're going to put it in their safe or bury it or whatever. That's the way to think about it with Bitcoin, is you can actually take custody of of your coins. And that's where it's a little bit different versus something like, how many people are actually taking custody of their stocks or their equities or whatever investment they have. Generally, it's just a promissory note that you have access to this. Even all your money that's in a bank account. Oh yeah, I've got all this money in your bank. You just have access to it, but you do not have custody. You only have custody of the cash that you hold on you. So think of it this way. You can now take custody of your store of value and transmit it whenever you like with no permission. With permissionless, decentralized, meaning that nobody's in control of it. It's censorship free. It doesn't matter who you decide to interact with on the network. It's going to happen. So that is a very powerful tool in itself. And that's partially why this has gone up in value so much.
Yeah, when I advise my friends, I give them a slightly less end goalie starting point, because what Jesse's describing is where I'm at, but I didn't get here in a day. I got here over several years. That self-custody thing is a huge responsibility because you screw it up, you lose your money, period. And so I'm very lucky. I have what I jokingly call a fuck-turded friend regarding crypto. He's my crypto fuck-turd friend. He doesn't really get it. He's scared shitless of it. So I advise him to just get exposure. Like you can do it through an app on your phone. Like if he just wants to put 500 bucks in, he buys it through his Newton app on his phone. Pure Bitcoin, there's other currencies as well. We'll keep it simple. I've also advised him as a Canadian to get TSFA exposure to Bitcoin and another cryptocurrency called Ethereum, because then he just can buy a stock, and he has a retirement fund and he has a TSFA account. You can buy a stock that's an ETF to Bitcoin and or other currencies, and there's no responsibility in that. Like, and perhaps they're not purists, perhaps they're not like contributing to like the private key holding and that culture, but they're getting exposure very, very safely for people who are very intimidated by the industry.
What about other types of cryptocurrency? Because it sounds like Bitcoin obviously is the big dog, but you've mentioned Ethereum. I've heard of Dogecoin. There's probably a bunch of other ones out there, I imagine.
To the moon.
So what's to differentiate these Bitcoins or these cryptocurrencies? And again, it's the same technology behind the scenes. It's blockchain technology in all cases, correct?
That's the short answer. The short answer is that there's some other.
It should be, or it's not legitimate.
Okay, right. It's not crypto if it's not blockchain, basically.
Okay, then we could also argue that proof of work is the only way to do things then too. So I don't want to hold.
We shall see.
Are you guys collaborators or competitors? I don't understand this dynamic yet. Awesome. All right.
Co-petition.
Well, you do make each other better, right? Fire sharpens steel.
We can hope.
That's right. We sure do.
It makes for a good dynamic, I got to tell you. Yeah, it makes for a good dynamic because you guys are definitely coming at it from different perspectives, and both are valid and important. So I think it's a good combo. But yeah, so what about these other types? Would I be better off investing in something that's coming up instead of going to Bitcoin, which is kind of, I don't know if it's topped out, but it's obviously more mainstream. Is there a better one coming out, or what's the deal?
Now, again, here's where we were talking about investing. And if investment is just about number go up, then you know what, and depending on your risk tolerance, if you're just interested in growing your US dollar value or your Canadian dollar value, then yes, there's probably more sicker gains, as it were, in buying alternative currencies, or what would I like to call shitcoins, because shitcoins pump the hardest. They just straight up do. So you're going to start seeing things that are, we've already seen, in over the past 6 months here, for example, we've seen some things that have had, triple X exposure, right? So those kind of things are going to happen. Whereas Bitcoin, for example, now for someone getting into it, that it's currently at $50,000 US, like I would struggle to believe that it's going to go over $250,000 this bull run up. So at that point, if you're going to look at it as an investment purpose, there's a 5x, that's a 500% return. So I believe that there's other shit coins that are going to do much better than 5x or 500%. So then again, that comes into your risk. Are you willing to take that on? And if you're just here to make money, then yeah, there's all kinds of different ways to do it. And you can, even as Kai has discussed, having exposure through, a Coinbase app, or having something on your phone, and, investing in through stock markets and whatnot. Those are great ways to just get exposure and have your dollar value go up. That's great. Now, this is where I caution the individuals, because we're starting to diverge from the idea of what cryptocurrency is designed to do versus number go up. So the idea is to be able to have sovereignty over your wealth. That is with again, peer-to-peer without a third party. And that's why I'm trying to educate people to actually take on that custody, to understand that like we need to get away from third party stuff rather than continue to contribute with it, because it's no different than your bank account. Because we just watched how all these Robinhood people who were going through GameStop, and all of a sudden, hey, yeah, they're buying a stock. Oh yeah, really like the stock. Now all of a sudden they can only sell. They're not allowed to buy. They can only sell, or they don't have access to it, or they have their other assets get sold off on them. Mm-hmm. There's where we deal with, there's where my issues are, right? We now have censorship involved. And
and the big guy that we're trying to get away from is getting his fingers in it and fucking it up.
Exactly.
Like he does.
So, and there again, it's like, if you're going to invest in this and you're going to go through letting the big guys handle it, we're not really getting away from anything. We're just watching our numbers go up, but theirs are as well. Because if
I totally disagree. And when my turn comes, I will totally disagree politely.
Yeah, perfect. Anyways, I'm more of a purist and trying to say like, hey, this is how we want to create sovereignty, because we can, if we build this culture around it, we can actually change things. Otherwise, we're just going to continue going down the same path in the same system. This is my opinion, that we're just going to allow the same corporations that we have that are running the way that things are running, and they're going to continue to do it what they're doing, except they're just going to change the ticker. So, anyway,
Kai, you're up, my friend.
We kind of went side.
No, that was perfect.
Just a little bit.
I thought that was perfect. I love that.
Good.
And I want to hear your point of view now.
I consider myself an independent and autonomous investor and a purist. And I hold roughly 50-50 Bitcoin, Ethereum, and then I hedge bet into what I call riskier projects. And to me, there are no shit coins. I'd never touch a fucking shit coin. I have people like Jesse going, oh, look at this shiny new shit coin, buy it. And I said, Jesse, fuck you. I'm not buying that shiny new shit coin. I don't buy shit coins.
There are some that are admittedly shit coins.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
don't touch them. You do your research. Don't jump into throwing money at the wall hoping it sticks, or you will eventually lose. You will. I've seen it 1,000 times. Man, I lost all my money as well. You bought shit coins. I am an investor. I'm an intelligent, educated investor. I make good decisions, and I stand by my record and my profitability. And I am diversified. I don't limit myself to, I shouldn't buy an ETF. The guy who created the ETF in Canada is a fucking rock solid stock guy. He's never done wrong by anybody. He's created this brilliant mechanism for Canadians to get legitimate exposure to Bitcoin and Ethereum. Thank you for letting Canadians have that venue to secure their wealth, get out of this funny money bullshit, Canadian funny fiat shit, and actually hedge their wealth to Bitcoin and Ethereum. What a brilliant device. He's sold $1 billion of it in like 6 months.
Wow.
That's a gift to Canadians. I have taken advantage of that gift. I have Bitcoin exposure through my TSFAs and my retirement savings plans directly through old institutions which need reforming and are dinosaurs, but we're not trying to blow the system up. We're trying to make it better. So we're integrating all of this together. And I have wealth in traditional markets, and I have wealth in these new crypto markets. And it's like the interface between the two, it to me, is where the magic happens. And the fact that I can hold private keys and hold everything in my own kind of trust is also something I like. And I must say, I sleep better at night knowing that half of my wealth is actually in secured institutions, where if someone comes and robs me and mugs my girlfriend and makes me give over my private keys, I'm broke. Like, there's a nice balance there. There's a nice balance.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I mean, like, I can see both sides of it. Like, I can see wanting to get completely off the titty, like completely cut these people off, get rid of the middleman. We don't need them anymore. We can just do it ourselves. We have the technology.
Clean them out.
I can see that. But I like the idea of using their system against them to dismantle their system and get to that place. So I like where you're going. I like where you're going with the purist approach, but I think to get there, we got to fleece these guys at their own game. And I like Kai's approach for that. So it's kind of like the nice progression, right? But at any time you're involved in the, let's call it, I don't know, mainstream economy, because that's where we're at now. Anytime you're involved with banks or the Wall Street or the stock markets, I feel like what you described with the whole GameStop situation, you're susceptible to them just rigging the game. And so that's where it's like, you got to be careful, because if you start making too much money, they're going to find a way to shut it down. And so my last question for you guys is, what's to stop governments, the World, Trade Organization, big banks all around the world uniting together? What's to stop them from killing cryptocurrency? Can it be done?
There's 3 ways to kill cryptocurrency, or Bitcoin, I should say. Let's just say Bitcoin, because that one I can actually say these are the ways to kill Bitcoin. First is a 51% attack. And I don't even think that the probability of that is quite low as well, because The idea here is if you can take 51% of the network, you are actually taking voting shares, imagine it that way,
Right.
where you can actually take over the network and start creating false transactions, double spends, whatnot. All of a sudden the network is becoming non-usable, right? And therefore would essentially drive the price to zero. Now, because we've had this network for 12 years, we've had people who've been watching it, monitoring it regularly. They're going to know when a new 51% of hash power, over half of it. So basically we would have to double the current hash power or hash rate that is coming online, suddenly just shows up out of nowhere. Now that's actually happened. Now, how did this all happen as well? Because there had to have been a covert mission in order to manufacture all of these crazy chips, which we are already underproducing right this time. There's a savage demand for it right now. So that would have to be created.
Right.
They're not cheap.
It would make
Then
ripples if someone were to do this.
And have a massive facility and going to require so much infrastructure and power that somebody would catch on that this is happening. And
it's impossible. It's impossible.
It's basically impossible. And if it did happen, we could then recognize, oh, these are the bad actors on the network. We could decide to fork over and choose, and we could signal, as we were saying, as validators and nodes, we could just say, hey, you know what? We don't like those guys. We're not going to play with them. So we're going to go this way. And everyone was going to realize that, hey, those guys are bad. So we're going to go this way. Therefore, all of that would just be thwarted and that would be such a waste. Whereas if they were to just participate in the network, it would be far more beneficial and extremely lucrative because they would win every single block. Well, I shouldn't say every, but they would win a majority of the blocks and just be taking over, reaping the benefits of network. And that's why it's an incentive-based system, right? So it promotes good behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one way, which I think is quite ineffective. The second one would be to create a covert mission where you could go around and actually bomb and blow up every massive facility, and then execute several humans as well that are involved in Bitcoin.
Zero.
Yeah. Well, again, you know what the government does. What we know the government does is enough to tell you they might do that. But you're right; it's unlikely.
It's a possible. I think
the U.S. government murdering its own citizens to stop Bitcoin production, and then also having to murder Canadian citizens to stop Bitcoin production.
Unlikely.
To me, that's not realistic.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
I agree. So that is one way that, if we wanted to go about it. And the last one, which is also not 100% probable, but if we killed the internet. However, we still have the Blockstream satellite, which is running around and is flying or, circling the skies, which is actually relaying the node. There's ways for people to transmit through radio waves. So if you killed the internet, maybe, but I think if we kill the internet, we've got bigger problems than worrying about the Bitcoin network, because at that point we're feast or famine at this point, and we're going to need some other thing.
Things are worse off. Yeah,
we'll have other priorities like the collapse of civilization.
Exactly.
Yeah. Kai, anything to add to that? Do you have any differing opinions on that, or anything to contribute?
To me, that's a succinct summation. To me, the only legitimate ability to shut down Bitcoin is through legislation and trying to ban it and make it illegal.
Right.
And so India has banned it. I think Nigeria just banned it. But they're putting themselves at such a competitive disadvantage. They're actually basically telling their citizens, we're going to enslave you in poverty, dumb. Please vote for us again. We want to enslave you in poverty. Keep voting for us. And I think at some point, especially as people become more aware of what that means to try to ban or legislate it out, that this is actually just a completely bastardized, corrupt attempt to limit human prosperity and freedom. I think that it will fail as an argument, but it will also fail pragmatically, because the police would then, killing Bitcoin miners or arresting Bitcoin miners, they would have to come into citizens' homes and say, give me your Bitcoin private keys. That's not going to happen. It's just, we don't, QAnon aside, we don't live in a over the top police state. It's complicated without a doubt, but
that's another podcast, Guy.
Exactly. And I like to quote Raoul Pal. He's a billionaire kind of crypto guy, new to the space. He's quite well connected. He has read the documents being put forth by the world, the international organizations. And Yeah, they've been talking about this new crypto thing for years, and they understand it better than we may think. And they understand that it's something that probably needs to be adopted because it's just better technology. So what do you do if a computer's invented? It threatens the horse and carriage industry. Let's ban computers. No, it just takes over the horse and carriage industry. It becomes obsolete. All of these things will just become obsolete in a generation or two. And this better technology will help humanity prosper, is my take on it.
To Star Trek.
Cheers,
and a future like Star Trek. Yes, that's
Star Wars, not Star Trek. Star Wars.
It's true. In Star Wars, they never talk about currency. I mean, that's the dream, right? But yeah, no, I mean, that was good thoughts, guys. I really appreciate that. I actually learned quite a lot.